Welcome, guys. Today I have for you my favorite Dynasty buys in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Now, today a lot of these buys are going to be based around general ADP. Obviously, I could sit up here and talk about, buying all the elite talent like Jefferson and Jamar Chase, but it's not realistic that you're going to be able to attain those type of guys right now. So I'm going to give you guys some cheaper options that can help you win your leagues in Dynasty Fantasy Football today. So let's get started. First up, Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones recently signed to the Indianapolis Colts. He got a 1-year, $14 million contract. Now, with Anthony Richardson being hurt right now, and also Anthony Richardson not being that good so far in these first 2 years, this gives Daniel Jones a massive chance to reclaim the starting role in this offense to be the starting quarterback. So he's very cheap right now. He's only about QB 35 in general ADP in drafts right now. So he's a very low cost guy. QB4. If he's your QB4, he's very good. He's very low cost, and he'd be a perfect start as your Superflex if you were a QB needy team. We've also seen Daniel Jones be good in fantasy football in the past. He was a QB1 in 2022 with the New York Giants, so due to that, we've seen him be good. And his rushing upside definitely boosts his floor. He's definitely a mobile guy. We've seen him run before, and obviously everyone's seen that clip of him falling over his face against the Eagles. But we know that he can produce, and he's a decent weapons around him with Michael Pittman Jr., Josh Downs, Adonai Mitchell, Alec Pierce, and they just drafted Tyler Warren, as long as with a good scheme. Shane Steichen. This team has been I think top half the league each year in points per game, even with bad quarterbacks such as Gardner Minshew, Joe Flacco, Anthony Richardson. So he's definitely in a good situation to succeed right now, and with how cheap he is, he's definitely a good buy for someone if that needs a quarterback in Dynasty right now. Moving on to the RBs. Our first RB we have right here is DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift's running back for the Bears, about RB 27 right now in general ADP. But DeAndre Swift, he is the clear-cut running back in this Chicago offense. He is a good pass catcher. He has consistently caught passes, and he's always a good checkdown option. The Bears did improve their offensive line and their offensive system. They just hire Ben Johnson, and we've seen Ben Johnson make the most out of these guys. One of the risks with DeAndre Swift is that he already was with Ben Johnson, and Ben Johnson got rid of him. But that was more of them drafting Jahmyr Gibbs and bringing in David Montgomery. But we've seen running backs succeed in Ben Johnson's system, so there's no reason why Swift can't do it. And DeAndre Swift has been a consistent, top 24 running back in his whole career. So he's going to be at least an RB2, and based on this current value right now, it's definitely a steal. He's under market, and when it comes to the fantasy season and you need points to score, he's going to be one of those guys that you can rely on. And he's only 26 years old, so he's still in the prime of his career, and there's not much around him that will take this role away from him. Which brings me to our next player, being Roschon Johnson. Now, Roschon Johnson is a very much a different player than DeAndre Swift. He's very much a more power back. He's a goal line and short yard specialist, but he's also great in pass protection, which might take away some snaps from DeAndre Swift, so we can see him playing on third down. He's also the handcuff. RB61 right now. That's not even is barely an RB2. Not even an RB2, more like an RB5 in your fantasy leagues right now, actually. But he is the RB2 on this Bears offense, so very low cost, and he has the touchdown potential, and he can he'll just fall into the end zone. He's a lot bigger than anybody else in this Bears running back room. DeAndre Swift he's not even 6 foot, and he's under 200 pounds, I believe. And we've seen Ben Johnson use 2 RBs in his system before, so he definitely has the potential to be the David Montgomery quotations in this Ben Johnson offense. But with the opportunity and the Bears offense projected to being better than what it was last year, I think this is definitely a good buy window to pick up Roschon Johnson for your fantasy teams if you're in need of a cheap RB2 backup handcuff running back. This will bring us to our next running back as well, Jaylen Wright, RB45 on the Miami Dolphins. Now, Jaylen Wright was considered one of the better running back prospects, not this past year, but the running back class before, with among the likes of Jonathan Brooks, Trey Benson, Marshawn Lloyd. But I believe he was the third or fourth running back taken in that year's class. So Miami traded up for him. They traded a future third-round pick and a fourth-round pick just to trade up to get this guy. So they definitely envision him at some point in their future, him taking on a lot of carries and being a meaningful player in the system. So, he has a 4.38 40-yard dash. He's a quick player, just like Dewan Achane. He is a good fit. We've seen Devon Achane even be used in the slot, so that means we could see a lineup of Tyreek Hill, Jaylen Waddle, and Achane all in the lineup as receivers. So that would just place Jaylen Wright as a running back. So if he's there, there's no reason to not be optimistic about his production. And Achane also has consistently missed time. I mean, we've seen him miss a couple games each year. He has these lingering injuries. He's a smaller back, so that is one of the downsides to having someone like that. But Jaylen Wright is also a perfect complement. And we know we've also seen the RB2 in Miami be amazing. I mean, it wasn't not even 2 years ago we saw Raheem Mostert be a top RB1 basically in that year, and he was 31 years old and almost a shell of himself, and that was the best year he's ever had was in this system. So there's no reason why Jaylen Wright can't take a sophomore leap and show up to be in that Raheem Mostert type of role. And Mike McDaniels also said he wants to use both RBs. I mean, Achane is not a guy you can just feed a ton of carries to. He is smaller, and he's also a great pass catcher. So all that wear and tear is going to build up over the course of a season for him. And, like I said before, we've seen him consistently miss time. And another reason why I like Wright is, he's a clear-cut RB2. There's really nobody else behind them in this Miami's Dolphin running back room. Jeff Wilson Jr. is gone. And, the best guy after Jaylen Wright is Alexander Mattison. We've seen Alexander Mattison not even be able to beat out guys in Vegas, and he was really just a volume guy at best. So that's why I got Jaylen right here. And for the last of our RBs, we got two of them. We're buying in on the Dallas Cowboys running back room this year with Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders. Now, I'm not really a big believer in Jayden Blue. I know Jayden Blue is one of the more highly sought after dynasty rookie running backs, to get late in the second round, early third round, just because of the opportunity there. But he wasn't really good in college. I didn't really like his tape. He wasn't. There's nothing that stood out to him. And both we've seen Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders both be good, and they have experience. So I think those two will definitely be slotted ahead. But more to talk about Javonte and Miles. They both enter with great opportunity. There's no clear-cut RB1 right now, and we've seen both of them take snaps with the first team. So Javonte Williams, he's 2 years post ACL recovery. He's going to be a lot healthier. We've seen guys who have had these devastating injuries. It takes them a while. Tony Pollard last year said it took him a while to feel better from when he broke his foot. And we saw Breece Hall, who also tore his ACL. It took him a while to come back, and now he's still regarded as a top 10 dynasty RB. Not saying that Javonte will be back up there, but the opportunity for him to produce as a starting running back in your dynasty teams is definitely possible. Now for Miles Sanders, he might have just been a beneficiary of playing with the Eagles his whole career and that great offensive line and a great offensive system, but he definitely still has a chance to carve out a role in this new offense. I mean, Cowboys' offensive line is pretty good, and we expect this Cowboys offense to be a lot better than it was last year with the healthy Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, and Jake Ferguson. So, whoever does end up getting this starting role, I think will definitely be a value based on where they are right now. I mean, these guys are RB44 and RB84. I mean, Miles Sanders might even be on your waivers. I know he's been on waivers in a couple of my leagues, so literally just a free pickup, and he might end up starting a couple games due to injury or him just beating out Javonte Williams in camp. So both of these guys definitely have the ceiling and the potential to produce as a top 12 guy this year. I think just based on the fact that this Cowboys offense is going to be scoring a lot of points, and if these guys just roll into the end zone 10 times and they put up 900 yards with decent amount of targets out of the backfield, definitely going to be good buys for your dynasty team. So now on to the wide receivers. Our first receiver we have here is Khalil Shakir out of the Buffalo Bills. Khalil Shakir did just sign a 4-year contract extension with Buffalo. He signed in through the 2029 NFL season. And, we saw last year that there was no true number one option in this offense, but it really was him. He was taking up a lot of the targets in this offense out of the slot. I mean, they traded for Amari Cooper. He wasn't anything special. Dalton Kincaid, we all thought would be a lot better, including myself, but, he didn't prove to be what he was. And then, we're still waiting on Keon Coleman. So, if Keon Coleman doesn't break out and, Kincaid is still kind of what he is, I mean, the only other receivers in this room is like Elijah Moore and Josh Palmer, both who I do like at their ADP, but, they didn't make this video. But back to Shakir. He's locked in as the wide receiver too, and he's a very efficient guy. He gets a lot of targets out of the slot, and he seems like Josh Allen's favorite receiver once the play starts to break down. So no reason why he should be ranked as the 46th wide receiver. I definitely think he could produce as a wide receiver 3 this year with the potential to have a massive breakout. Now on to Jayden Higgins. Jayden Higgins is probably one of my favorite receivers out of this rookie draft class. I think he was very much a sleeper among all the other receivers that we've seen drafted. He has shown the ability to, in college at least, to do everything. He's good with the contested catches. He's good size and he's good speed, but he also can develop into kind of like how I see Nico Collins. Bigger receivers, faster receivers, but they also still have good route running. So there's definitely no reason why he should be there's a reason why he should be this low, but I definitely think it's a sleeper. And another reason why I like him a lot is I'm just gonna follow the money. He's a fully guaranteed contract as a day 2 pick, and he definitely has the opportunity to slot right in as the Texans wide receiver too. Along with all the buzz with him in OTAs, I know I don't like to buy into much of that, but he's looked really good, and I'm not gonna discredit talent where talent's showing up. So on to our next receiver. We have Cedric Tillman. Now, Cedric Tillman, I think, is definitely one of the most underrated guys right here, coming in at wide receiver 62 from the Cleveland Browns. We saw that 4-week stretch with him and Jameis Winston. He exploded onto the scene. I don't think anybody really saw it, where he had 40 targets, which was a huge target percentage there. And he's recorded 24 receptions for 302 yards and 3 touchdowns. I mean, we saw him score that game-winning touchdown against the Ravens that one game. And he showed elite efficiency during that stretch. He was the wide receiver 8 in points per game, averaging 15.4 PPR points per game. And he also saw a lot of usage. He was running 80% of offensive snaps while Amari Cooper was out. And I think a lot of people were expecting the Browns to add a receiver this year. Especially, I think a lot of people were expecting them to take Travis Hunter. But they did trade down, and other than that, they didn't add anything to this wide receiver room. So there's no reason why Cedric Tillman can't just slide back into this wide receiver 2 role. He's a bigger body receiver, and other than him, it's just Jerry Jeudy and David Njoku ahead of him in the passing game in terms of targets. So no reason why he can't just slot in as the 3rd target on this team, potentially even the 2nd target if he overtakes Njoku, maybe even Jeudy. But we've seen Joe Flacco be able to feed wide receivers, and that's why I do think we'll be starting week 1, or at least we'll get some run at some point this year. I'm not a believer in Pickett or Shakir or Dylan Gabriel, so I think if the Browns really want to remain competitive, they're going to have to play Flacco, which means they're going to be throwing the ball a lot. So if he's throwing the ball a lot, it's probably going to end up going to Cedric Tillman's hands. So probably one of my favorite receivers at ADP, and I can totally see him smashing this wide receiver 2 ADP right now. I mean, he could definitely be a wide receiver 3. And, he did have good draft capital coming out 2 years ago. He was, I believe, pick 72 in the 3rd round from the Browns 2 years ago. So they did invest in him. They gave him good draft capital, and I believe he's just gonna absolutely smash this wide receiver 62 ranking right now. And on to our final wide receiver, more of a bigger deep sleeper, but Calvin Austin, wide receiver 99 from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now we've seen Calvin Austin in the past very much just be a deep threat. We saw him, just seeing him be a slot guy going down the field and just burning safety. So, I mean, now that he is the clear-cut wide receiver number 2 at this point, I don't see Roman Wilson, Robert Woods, I don't know if Van Jefferson's still there. I don't believe so, but at worst he's the wide receiver 3, but I think he's going to gain the trust of Aaron Rodgers really quick to be this wide receiver 2. He's probably their best deep threat, I would say, and in the slot. And at this ADP, wide receiver 99, he's basically free. So there's no reason why he might be on waivers, or you could probably go out and get him for a 3rd round pick, maybe even less. So pure upside here. Definitely has the ability to way smash this wide receiver 99 ADP right now. And then this will bring us on to our final positional group, being the tight ends. So probably one of my favorite tight ends for not only Dynasty for my Dynasty contending teams, but also in redraft if you're a believer in punting the tight end. But we'll get into some redraft strategy in a little bit. But Hunter Henry, tight end 29 for the New England Patriots. He's the tight end 1 for year 2 Drake May. I'm a lot more optimistic about this Patriots offense than I was last year. I mean, Drake May's going to get a full year. He's going to have a full off season to work with everybody. So definitely a bigger believer in that. And he's a reliable option. He's a target hog, and there's not many people ahead of him in this passing offense. I mean, it's really just Stephon Diggs is going to slot in as your wide receiver 1, and it's a battle for wide receiver 2 right now between, Kyle Williams, Mac Hollins, Kayshon Boutte, Pop Douglas, and Mac Hollins. So I really think Hunter Henry is in a tier above those guys, but below Stephon Diggs. So I see him being the second passing option in this offense. Maybe if Trayvon Henderson or Ramondre Stevenson are trying to take up some of his targets, I just don't see that being realistic. But it's very cheap. I mean, tight end 29, he's a tight end 3. And, we've seen Hunter Henry be a good tight end 1. Last year, he was the tight end 12, just slotting in as tight end 1. And he's also had 2 other tight end 1 seasons, being top 12 at the position. That gives you a positional advantage over everybody else, over guys that are starting, the tight end 16 every weekend. He almost had 5 tight end 1 seasons. One year he missed out by 1 spot as the tight end 13, and another year he got hurt and he was on track to be a tight end 1. So I'm a really big believer in Hunter Henry this year. So, if you need a tight end for relatively cheap, definitely go out and try and target him. And this brings us to our last player, being Juwan Johnson, tight end 40 from the New Orleans Saints. Juwan Johnson, probably one of the more underrated guys. I mean, the Saints offense is not littered with a lot of talent, but I am a big believer in Juwan Johnson. He's a red zone scoring threat. I mean, he's an athletic player for this position. I believe he's 6'4", and he almost has a build over wide receiver, but he plays tight end because he's a good enough blocker. So he's still really young. He's only 26, I believe, so he's entering the prime of his career. And he's extremely affordable, especially in if you're playing a tight end premium league. I mean, tight end 40, that's basically nothing at this point. And another reason why I'm such a big believer in Juwan Johnson is that the Saints team is awful. I mean, all around, there's not much to really be excited for, and they're very cap limited, and they decided to pay him a 3-year, $30 million contract. So that leaves me to believe that they definitely see him being involved in this offense a lot more than people may anticipate. And, behind Olave and Rashid Shaheed, I think he could definitely take over as being the main red zone threat in this offense. And, rookie QBs, they tend to target the tight end a lot. I mean, Tyler Shuck is probably going to slot in as the starter for this season. Everybody has their own take on him. But, I definitely think that Juwan Johnson at ADP and for what the upside he brings is definitely a good value. So that's it, guys. Thank you for watching my video. This is the only Dynasty buys you need right now. And, got a little wrap up here for you guys. So like the video. Let me know what you think. Drop a comment, subscribe, like, and have a good day, guys. Peace.